Readers Entertainment Radio presents Booklights with your host, author Lisa Kessler. Booklights, where we're shining a light on good books.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad you're tuning in to Booklights today. You are in for a huge treat. Today we have author Amelia Diane Coombs, who is the author of a new dark comedic mystery, Drop Dead Sisters, as well as 4 young adult novels. Most recently, All Alone with You, which was a JLG Gold Standard selection. She's actually a Northern California transplant, now living in Seattle, Washington, with her spouse and their Siberian cat. And when she isn't writing or reading, Amelia spends her time playing video and tabletop games, road tripping, and hiking the Pacific Northwest. I did put a link to her website right there on the show notes. So if you would like to click that at any time, you can check out her website, her books, and also sign up for her newsletter. So without any further delay, are you there, Amelia?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on today. I'm so excited to chat with you. So your new book is Drop Dead Sisters, and it is book 1 of the Finch Sisters series. You want to tell everybody the inspiration behind it and why they should go grab a copy this week?
So I've written, as you were kind of explaining, I've written 4 YA novels, and I love YA, but a couple years ago, I was chatting with my agent. I kind of wanted to branch out and kind of just explore creatively and see what else I could do. So I've always read a lot of mysteries, a lot of thrillers. I love true crime as a genre. And my agent's like, why don't you write something like that? If that's what you really enjoy consuming. And I was like, she's like, follow the joy. So I kind of started working on this project, and she helped me with the pitch. And I come from a family of really avid campers. My dad has gone camping in the same campground for over 50 years.
Wow.
Oh yeah. And I've gone camping pretty much every single summer of my life since I joke I was a fetus when my mom was pregnant with me. And all my sisters, so I have 2 older sisters too. So a lot of the framework for Drop Dead Sisters comes from my own life, even though everything else is different. Relationship dynamics, different roles, everything is very different. But the core concept of this, big family that goes on a camping trip, and the dynamic, this sort of rivalry between these 3 sisters is kind of what fed the initial idea. My agent was the one who was like, oh, it should be about sisters. Because at first it was going to be about 2 friends, which is so weird in hindsight now to think about. It's that's where I was going. And she's like, write about sisters. You have sisters. And she had. So I was like, oh, man, that's such a good idea. Why have I never thought of that? Turns out I had a lot to say on the topic. So it was really fun to, kind of write this sort of, mistakes, comedy of errors, people just making terrible decisions, but hopefully for relatable reasons. And the framework just kind of came from something I do every single summer. Except for it never goes that poorly.
Yeah, I was going to say, during your camping trips, has a body ever shown up?
No. I think the wildest thing was once we had a guy cleaning his gun at the campground, and it went off because he was cleaning it and he shot himself.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. I think he was fine. This is when I was much younger. And then a couple years ago, this actually inspired this, I don't think it's much of a spoiler. It's kind of a lockdown scene that happens. There was a kind of pseudo lockdown at the campground because they were looking for someone who I think had a warrant out for their arrest.
Oh,
and that was super weird because we were all oh my gosh, what's going on? There's all these cops, and they were all posted up at the exits, and they were looking into cars. And so there's been a few things over the years, mostly bears. That's exciting. But yeah, nothing quite so murderous.
Oh, fun. Well, how did your sisters feel when have they read the book?
No, I don't know if they have yet. So when this book sold, I was actually on my family camping trip when I found out that my editor was acquiring it. And so I was there with one of my sisters. My other one wasn't there. And I was telling her about it. And she was just oh my God, if there was going to be a murder in our family, it would totally be me. So I was so thrilled. It was the funniest. I was yeah, you're not totally wrong. She's hilarious, but I was just but no, I very intentionally included a disclaimer in my acknowledgments where I'm fictional. This isn't about you guys.
Yes.
Everything is about you. As my older sisters, it's not, I swear. There were some parallels that definitely happened unintentionally where I can't help that it happened. They just have to know that it wasn't a dig at them.
Right.
Yeah.
None of them are a potential murder suspect.
No, they are not.
Well, I wanted to ask how many books are, I mean, if there's three sisters, is there going to be three books or do you?
Oh, yeah, right now I kind of don't know. I'm actually actively working on the sequel. It's what I have to get into today.
Oh,
But yeah, that's what I got my edits like 2 weeks ago. So I'm just diving into that. But I'm hoping for more books. Like publishing is, is fickle and kind of weird. So it's a lot of it depends on how like book one does. I think the contract was initially for 2 books, which was like Drop Dead Sisters and then like a TBD, which then they decided they did want to be a sequel. So I'm hoping to find out maybe in the next like, 3 to 6 months if there'll be a third book. I do have a like general idea for a third book and even more, but it's kind of out of my hands right now. So like
all right.
Yeah.
If there's a third book and you have the idea for more, when I was reading up about the book, I was like, oh my gosh, they could be like sleuths for camping, things, because I'm a writer too. And when I'm doing boring work like newsletters, I always have homework TV on and watch documentaries. And there have been a few different documentaries about all the bodies that turn up in national parks and all that. Do you see do you see your sisters like being national park sleuths?
I mean, I actually really love that idea. The second book currently is taking place in Seattle. So there is still some nature around, but I did deviate from the campground, but I really do love that idea because there's too many dead bodies. Like you can look up a map of like missing people or something overlapped with like state parks and it's like so creepy. But I do get it. You're very much off the grid.
I guess. Yeah. It just never occurred to me till I saw those documentaries. Yeah.
It's a thing. It's a thing out there, apparently.
Yeah. You didn't know that all of your camping trips were so dangerous.
No. Like as a kid, I'm like, geez, what happened there that I didn't know about? The campground my family has gone to is the Donner Lake campground, which had the Donner Party. So like growing up, it was like I don't know if you know, like like cannibal. Like so as a kid, I always thought that was like I got like super into the Donner Party. I was such a weird kid, but like I went to that campground, so I thought it was like so cool, and they had a little museum about the Donner Party. So like baseline, I knew that like cannibalism happened there, but I don't know about any other murders.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny because as an adult can look back at all these things that people said were weird about you as a kid. And really it was just book research, right?
Oh yeah. I'm like, this all came in handy at some point.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Who knew?
I know, right? For sure.
Well, you brought up your young adult novels, and I wanted to ask you what the difference was for you as a writer between writing YA and then writing an adult mystery. What did you have to put on a different hat? How did it change?
Yeah. I'd say the difference wasn't as maybe big as I thought it would be. There's some common through lines, which I think kind of helped. And I do think that Drop Dead Sisters has kind of, a younger, youthy like voice to it. But in my YA novels, I wrote like some romance and mental health rep, which does like carry through into my adult debut. So like there were some through lines that I think kind of helped. But I think the biggest difference was it's just, I'd written YA so consistently for so long that I had like a pattern and sort of like I kind of knew what I was doing. So going into the adult mystery, I kind of like didn't know what I was doing. And that was kind of terrifying because I felt so comfortable in YA where I was like, I kind of know all the beats, I know the conventions. And going into this, I was sort of just like, I think I know what I'm doing. I read a lot of this. I don't know if I'm doing it right. Like, and so it was more of just nerve-wracking for me trying something new. But my agent was like super supportive and I was like, I'm worried about this, this, and this. And she's like, I'll look at it when, don't worry, just like write the book. And I have my own like little notes to myself from when I first drafted being like, it's new, you're doing a new thing. It's not YA. You're probably going to mess it up. Like little like cheesy notes, just like have fun. So it was different. In a lot of ways, it wasn't as challenging as I thought it would be. It was just sort of like a fun adventure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, obviously you're going to keep writing these sisters. Are you still writing YA too?
Yeah, I wrote another YA over the summer that is like in the pipeline of things I need to revise at some point, but I've just been so busy. I wrote it like in this little gap between when I had to draft the first draft for the sequel, and I kind of got it all done. And then my agent read it and was like, she liked it. And I'm like, we have to do some revisions, but like timing wise with writing the sequel, I was like contracted book, I have to do this. So one day, I don't know, it's kind of sitting over there waiting to be worked on. And then, who knows if anyone will buy it. So it's there, but it was fun to kind of go back to as well. I enjoy it.
Yeah, it felt comfortable, right? Getting back in with your old friends.
It was a little different because it's more of like a speculative book versus being purely contemporary. So even then it was slightly different than what I'd been doing before, but still some of I just like writing for teens. I don't know what it is. It's like comfort. I enjoy it. But I found that I have a lot of fun writing adult mystery, especially just kind of like, I don't know, Drop Dead Sisters is pretty goofy in a lot of ways, and that's intentional. Like I love people, just making really, really bad decisions, but you're like, oh, I get it. Like you did that and that was bad, but like, I get it. And just seeing, the domino effect of everything else wrong that can happen. It's kind of like the Fargo effect where it's just like, just bad things and people doing just stupid stuff. And you're like, oh, but I get it. And now let's watch like 8 other things happen because you made this one really bad decision in the moment. So there's something really fun with that. And like coming up with these scenarios of like, what else can go wrong? Like, how can I make this like absurd and funny, but like believable, hopefully to a small degree, of why someone would do this. So that in that way, it's a lot of fun.
Did you watch shows like I saw people comparing it to Dead to Me, which I loved on Netflix. As a writer, I would watch that show and go, oh my gosh, the way they keep twisting it worse and worse and worse. And then, he has a twin brother, worse and worse.
It's more, they just keep going. And you're just like, how's this happening?
Right.
Yes, I love those shows. Yeah, I love all those shows. They're so good.
Yeah. Did you have fun, like keep twisting that to make it, worse and worse?
Yeah, that part's fun just because it's like I couldn't really do that in my YAs, and also they were like contemporary romances, so like what really is going wrong? So I do love that kind of like, okay, how can I make this like slightly worse or slightly more like ridiculous and fun? And just, for lack of a better word, like campy. Like I had a lot of fun working with my editor because we changed a handful of things when we worked on the book last year. And she just kind of encouraged me to go kind of like unhinged with it. So I was like, okay, what about this idea? Yeah, it was so fun to kind of just get to explore that. And then also be encouraged to kind of just like take it down this path of being like, just twisting it and seeing what else could possibly go wrong that could like, be entertaining.
Right. Well, without any spoilers, do you have a favorite scene from the book?
Let me think. Let's see. I mean, I think it's a big spoiler scene, so I won't get into details, but like it's when Remy hurts her ankle later in the book. That scene and writing that scene, I remember I had the idea for what happens in that. And I was just like, oh, that'd be so funny. Of just how they lose the thing that they're looking for. And just I do really love that scene, and I had a lot of fun writing it. That would probably be one of my more favorite scenes.
Did you plot it all out, or did you let the book write itself? You a plotter?
I'm a little bit of both. I used to be like, oh, like I'm a pantser, I'm just gonna go in and like can't do that anymore. I could maybe do that, when I wasn't ever on a book contract. But so I like to do like a loose outline. I've found if I go too hard in the other direction where I'm very strictly outlined, I like freeze up. So I've learned I'm kind of like, I do things to write themselves a little bit because like when I start working on a book, I get very like immersed in it. I get a lot of ideas once I'm into the scenes and I'm thinking about it a lot. So I often come up with like ideas as I'm going. So if I'm really like married to a certain like midpoint or an ending, I often go like, oh, but this other idea is like so much better. Like, how can I force them to all work? And usually you can't. And so I do like a little flexibility. So sometimes I usually go into a draft knowing like up until the kind of midpoint, sort of. Unfortunately, that didn't work a ton for my editor. She's like, we need to know who the murderer is when I worked on the sequel. And I was like, fair enough. I was like, I'll get there, I'll figure it out, but I didn't apply for her, which I understand. But for Drop Dead Sisters, there was actually like, I don't know if this gives away too much. Like initially the sisters like do kill him by accident. So we can edit this out if you don't want to include it, but that was how it actually went down. And then I had this idea about who the actual killer would be. And I was like, can we make this work instead? Because like this would be like really fun. And they were like, yeah. So, I mean, things changed as, the process went along, but it kind of still worked into the existing framework of like them not really knowing what happened. And then with the sequel, this doesn't give anything away. And I've shared this story a few times, but it's so absurd. When I was working on that outline for my editor and like trying to get her to sign off on the sequel, we came up with this idea and I liked it. And I was like, cool. And I finally figured out who that killer was. And she was like, all right, go write it. And so I went and I got like 60,000 words in and I was having a really hard time. It was like pulling teeth. And I was like, is it the outline? It's tight. I'm like, what's kind of going on here with me in this book? And I'm like, maybe it's me. Like I'm getting in my head about writing a sequel, like the stress of like the first book out soon. And then I sat down one weekend and like kind of picked it all apart. And I was like, oh, it's not funny. Like the first book had humor in it. It had and there's dark humor, but there's situations where we can get humor from the characters. And like the situations I had written into the second book, like weren't that funny. They were kind of tragic. And I was like, oh, I think I've gone too far in a certain direction.
Serious.
So, too serious. I'm trying to make it funny and totally it's like bad. So I had to email my editor. I had like 4 weeks left and was like, hey, don't hate me. Like I sat down over the weekend and she already knew I was kind of having some issues. And I was like, I think this is what's wrong. Here's my fix. Can I do it? And she was like, I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, go for it. So I like rewrote all of it and then finished it in like 5 weeks. So it was so stressful and so exhausting, but I'm really glad that I pivoted because I hope no one will ever see that version of my sequel. It was not good. But it was one of those things where I think maybe I tried to go too hard into like what I thought like the mystery, like outline should be and like, these beats. And I should have listened, I think, to my gut a little bit sooner that some of these plot points weren't working the way I wanted them to, because everything's different execution is when you're just talking about it. So I probably wasted, a month or two and several thousand words.
Dang it.
We got there. We got there in the end. At least I hope so.
Yeah, as a writer, my heart hurts for you. I hate when you have to throw words away. It's like, oh.
I know. I told her, I was like, I can recycle a bunch of stuff. And then I sat down and I was like, no, I can't. I was like, maybe. Some mental work that I'd done carried through, some character work, like scene stuff. A lot of it was like totally scrapped. It happens.
Oh, well, that kind of dovetails into that. Our listeners tend to be readers and they're really interested in how you became a writer. Did you always want to be a writer or what was your writing journey?
Yeah, my writing journey, I mean, I feel like it's fairly typical. I always loved writing as a little kid. I don't know when I realized you could be an author. I think, I just was like, books, they exist, people write them, but I don't think I knew it could be like really a job. But I wrote a lot when I was younger, but I had pretty bad social anxiety and I was very, very shy. So I never wanted to share my writing with anyone. I was very, very insecure. When I was in college, I wanted to apply to a like upper division writing program. And I had to like submit a writing sample to do that. They would have just let me in. So I had to like, I know, what's so rude. So I had to like do the writing sample and I was so nervous and I actually got in. I was like, oh, and that was the first thing I was like, okay, maybe I'm like not bad. Maybe I'm like okay at it. Like, and I had a great writing teacher and, he was fantastic and overall it was a good experience. And then I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do after? Because I think this was my senior year of college. I was like, well, maybe I could try getting my MFA. And like getting my MFA, I don't think helped me a ton in becoming a writer. I think it was a really interesting experience, but it's never one of those things where I feel like people should ever feel the need to get a degree in writing to become a writer. You do not need it. I think I learned a lot. I was quite young, straight into my MFA after finishing my senior year of college. So I was like the youngest person in my program. I think I learned a lot about more of like myself and who I wanted to be as a writer versus like anything else. So in that way it was helpful. But I went and did that. And after was like, okay, like I'll try querying and just kind of like see how it goes. And over like it took me a while. I've had a few different agents over the years. I've had, an imprint closed. I've had other things happen to me. So it's been, a roller coaster journey. But I've been quite lucky with the people I've met along the way. So a lot of it is just, kind of happenstance. But I always really loved writing and kind of was just like, we'll give it a shot and we'll see how things go. And I didn't really know how they would.
Right, right. Well, and now everything in publishing seems to change so rapidly that, there's a million different ways. Because I started out traditional and then I was hybrid and now I'm indie. And I think it's so wonderful that there are so many options now, because when I started out, it was so stressful because you're working so hard and you don't know if anyone will ever read it, right?
Oh, it's very stressful. And I still feel that, where it's like, even though, not with the sequel because that book is contracted, but working on new things, it's always been hard because I'm like, I'm pouring so much time and energy into this and it might just go like sit in a drawer forever. And like, that is like the ultimate reality of traditional publishing. You're just, kind of on this journey where I'm like, okay, well, like at least maybe I'll still have fun with it or like learn something about myself or as a writer as I work on different projects. But it can be, it's a stressful journey for sure. Like my first book came out like right during the pandemic and it was like right after my imprint like closed and it got like absorbed by another imprint. Oh yeah. It was like the worst few months of my life because it was so weird and like, oh, my imprint like kind of doesn't exist anymore. My editor's getting moved and like it was just so chaotic and all those things are out of your control. Like I've pretty bad anxiety and like I talk about in therapy just so much about like my lack of control in publishing and how stressful that is. And I always try to remind myself like the only thing so cheesy you can control is your writing. So it's like every time I start to spiral, being like, well, what about how's this going to go? Are they going to want this? Is this going to be successful? I'm like, no, you can't change any of that, no matter how hard you sit and like will it and just hyper focus on it. Like you can only control the words. So I very much try to focus on that because it's so easy to get wrapped up in all the little minutia that you can't control in publishing.
That is so true. And it's so funny because when you're just starting out or like if you're a reader and you don't write, you don't know all the behind the scenes things of, I got orphaned at one point halfway through a series and now my editor's gone. And I'm like, I
know you're like, editor. I know. You're just like, now what? Does this other person like me? Like, are they going to want to work on these books? Like, it's so weird. I remember being younger, like just being a really avid reader, and I can't remember the author's name, so I do feel kind of bad, but I remember reading someone's books, and I was just like, why aren't there more of these? These are so good. Like, why didn't she write more? And I was like so mad. I was probably like 16 or 17 at the time, but I just remember being like, why did she not write any more of these? Why are there only 2? Or something. And I was like, oh, probably wasn't her goal.
Yes. Yeah, now that you're older and in publishing, you realize it's so hard for a book to get published. So
exactly. It takes so many things going right and so many other things can go wrong even after that one thing goes right. So it's like it's amazing any of us make it out alive.
True.
Totally stressful.
Well, what's you mentioned you're working on the sequel. Is that already up for pre-order? What's next for you?
I think it is. I think at least like the Kindle version is. I know that with the Amazon First Reads, they were wanting to make sure that the sequel is available and up there. So currently, working on that, and that's been fun. The title is Sisters Before Misters. And
love it.
I don't know how much I can say about it, but it does focus on like a mysterious disappearance that happens around Halloween, and it's set in Seattle, which is where I live. So that's been fun. And I love my favorite holiday.
I love that.
So I'm working on that. Yeah, it's been a fun setup. It includes the same cast of characters plus a few new ones. And I've been just mostly focused on that. And then, like I said, I like have this like YA that's sort of just like been sitting for a few months that I will probably work on maybe after the holidays. And we'll see kind of like where that goes. I read really widely. I like to write widely too. So I've tried writing like middle grade. So I've been trying to play around with that too. And that's fun and really different, very different energy and vibe. It's very goofy, which I do enjoy. I love reading it and writing it. It's very joyful. So yeah, that's kind of
Yes,
like
yay.
playing around with. Yeah.
Well, before we run out of time, it is November. And so I've been asking all of our guests about gratitude. Who helped you along the way? Do you have anybody like a writer or an agent or
I mean, like,
who changed it?
Can I say a few?
Oh yeah, go for it.
One is my dad. My
Aww.
dad is my biggest fan. My dad is a huge reader and always really encouraged me to read when I was younger. My mom, I love her. She's like a math-based person. She doesn't get English or reading anything, but my dad he is a huge reader. And so always encouraged me to read, always thought I could be a writer, always thought I could get published, always thought I deserved more. So it's like, he's my biggest fan.
Dad.
He yells about my books to everyone. And if something has sold and like, I can't tell anyone, I have to be like, Dad, you can't tell, this is not public yet. You can't tell anyone about this. I'm telling you because I love you and you're my dad. You can't go call your friends because you totally will. And I have to give him this big disclaimer. So my dad would not be where I am without my dad. He is just such a big supporter of me. And part of it felt so baseless because I feel like it's before he read anything I wrote. He just like believed in me because I was his kid. So it's very sweet. I am always so grateful for both like my husband, similar vibes of just being very, very supportive. We've been together for like almost a decade before I was ever published. And he always just thought I would get there. And I don't ever have that level of confidence in myself. So it's just amazing when other people do. And then my agent, Melanie, is just so fantastic. I signed with her 4 years ago. Yeah, it was 2020. And she signed me like between contracts. So kind of like for my career. And she's been so lovely with like helping me think holistically about my career. Because before I was just like project. But she's helped me be like, okay, like what do I want? How can I expand? What other things can I do? Like, she's a very good support system and has put out so many fires.
Yay.
Which is what you need. So she's fantastic. So I've got a lot of lovely people.
I love that. All right. Well, before we run out of time, how do people get in touch with you when they're so excited because they read the book and it was great? Are you on social media?
I'm not a huge social media person, but I do have an Instagram, and it's sincerely_Amelia. And then I think you listed my website. So that's another has like contact form. And I think it has a link to my Instagram on there too. So yeah, those are like the main ways you can kind of get in contact with me. I've just been like taking a Instagram break for like working on my sequel and just like not looking at the world for a little bit. But like I do generally, they're pretty frequently. So it's a good way to get in contact or email. Yeah.
Good. And for anyone who is listening who loves the book, I always like to put out this reminder that we get in our head that an author's too busy and doesn't have time to read it. Please email the author and tell them that you love the book.
So nice.
You never know.
It's so funny, but I've been that person. I'm like, I don't want to bother them. I'm like, no one's ever bothering me.
Right. Exactly. Well, and two, a lot of times you have no idea if the author is struggling with a book right now, or if they're waiting to hear if the book's even going to get published. And getting that email from you can change their whole day.
No, I've had those emails where I'm just like, that's like the nicest thing. Like, I got this very cute email from I'm not calling her grandmother. She said she was a grandmother. I was talking all about her grandkids. But when the book came out for Amazon First Read, she sent me this like really long email. And she's like from the area. And it was so sweet. And I was just like, I read the entire thing and it made me so happy because it was like the first person who had reached out about Drop Dead Sisters. And I was just like, this is such a nice, like, thank you. Like, I'm so stressed out right now. This is so kind and sweet.
Right.
So emails are always like very appreciated. I keep all of them.
Yes. Yay. So when you finish Drop Dead Sisters, and if you don't have it, run out and get it today. I saw it is still in the top 100 on Amazon. So kudos to you. It's finding readers. And so when you guys finish the book, if you're really excited, don't hesitate to send an email or a little Instagram message or whatever, just to let the author know, because you really can make someone's day and make more chapters get written. So
yeah, so true. Awesome.
So thanks so much for being here today, Amelia. It was great chatting with you, and good luck with the sequel. And I can't wait to read it. It sounds fabulous.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on Booklights. Be sure to connect with us at www.readersentertainment.com for articles, blogs, videos, and podcasts that matter to readers.